It's My Nerd World, Depeche Mode, the podcast. On this week's episode, more tour spoilers as the warm-up shows continue. I'll give you my review of the Memento Mori CD physical release and a lot of listener feedback.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. How's it going? There is just something special about this album. And that's clear from not only the reviews, but also your feedback as well, and my own experience with Memento Mori. And it's interesting to me, and what's the word I'm looking for? Satisfying. It's satisfying that I've received so much feedback from individuals who kind of keyed in on the same thing that I did, and specifically that this album is unique in and of itself while still being classic Depeche Mode and being one of their best releases, since most everybody seems to be landing on Ultra, while others, are kind of going back to playing the Angel. But it's I know for me, the album just gets better and better with every listen. It really is most closely aligned with Songs of Faith and Devotion from that aspect of it. Going back to sort of the classic albums and the trilogy, as I call them, and that moves, as I've said, Black Celebration, but is in there. But when you go to Music for the Masses, Violator, Songs of Faith and Devotion, Music for the Masses was, in my opinion, a lot like Memento Mori from the standpoint of a culmination of what they had been doing in this, wrapped up cohesive package, where it was a departure from what we saw in Black Celebration, but certainly had elements from that and what they had done with Some Great Reward beforehand, wrapped up in something completely new and different. Memento Mori feels like that throughout their entire catalog for the most part, but at the same time being something unique and different unto itself. And confidence continues to come back and sort of enter into my mind when I think about this album. And it's all that I've been listening to since it was released, from the leaked version that I was blessed enough to have over a month ago now, to then the album rip that leaked the week before the album, and then to the release itself. And now finally the physical release, which I'll talk about here in a moment, which has added another layer to my thoughts on the album. So before I get to all of that, I want to talk just briefly about the warm-up shows that have been continuing. They'll be playing in Las Vegas tomorrow night, just played in Los Angeles the other night, and I got a few thoughts I want to share. And I'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into listener feedback, because I think there's some comments from those that have seen the tour. The only change in the set list so far from the, is it 22 or 23 songs? I think it's 22. Might be 23. I'm not going to stop the show and look. It's one of the two. Has been the addition of Condemnation in place of Waiting for the Night that took place at the Staples Center for the Los Angeles performance earlier this week. Was a great rendition of the song. I think Dave's vocals sounded really good. I know there's been some individuals that have been commenting on Dave's vocals and how they've been rough, and I've seen that in some of the videos that I've watched online, but I also think that this was just a byproduct of not having performed for 6 years. Dave is also 6 years older. That being said, on the majority of the footage that I've seen, he's been sounding great. And the music sounds phenomenal. I mean, that's the one thing that's really been blowing me away. I don't know if it's specifically the sound equipment they're bringing with them, but the quality of the music in and of itself, even from cell phone footage, has just been incredible. It just sounds amazing. I can't wait to see them in Denver in November, and by that time how how accustomed they will have become to playing and performing live again by the time we get to that. Martin Gore, in a recent interview, said they actually rehearsed 25 to 28 songs, and so, we could maybe see a change in the set list, and some people allude to the fact these were called warm-up shows on this first leg before they head overseas. So maybe we will end up getting more songs off of Memento Mori, and I really hope so. This album is being so well received, and there's so many tracks. Don't Say You Love Me, Before We Drown, and People Are Good. I mean, I would love to see them go, and I mentioned this last week, I would love to see them, take out some of these songs that we've heard before. I know they're classics, but, give us, especially with the set design being what it is, and the visuals of Anton Corbijn, the giant M being the background, obviously, Memento Mori and Mode. There's a fantasy, I don't want to say conspiracy is not the right word, but maybe in my wildest fantasies, I imagine that these are warm-up shows, and there's actually a D that's been produced for the stage, and that when they get past these warm-up shows, we'll have a D and an M up there. Because if you slide the M over that's on the stage and you put a D next to it, I think it'd actually fit. I think that would be rad. Very much like the singles tour. I don't see it happening. I think it's just going to be the M for the rest of the tour. But I think that would be really neat. And I know why Anton did it, because of Mode and Memento Mori. I just think having the D and the M there would have been a little bit better. But that's just me. Anyway, Martin did say they rehearsed 25 to 28 songs. That could include some of the ones that he and Peter Gordino could do in his solo. So we'll see if they end up making any changes in the set list once we get past these doing that thing with my fingers warm-up shows. So, all right, let's talk a little bit, or I'll talk a little bit about the physical release of Memento Mori, and I've got kind of a funny story to share. So I ordered the deluxe edition off of the Depeche Mode website. I was waiting for it to be available on Amazon, but all they had was the regular CD version. So I finally bit the bullet, I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Probably about 2 weeks ago now. And went ahead and ordered the deluxe edition off of the official website. Well, it's still not here yet. It's scheduled to arrive today by 9 o'clock, but I was looking at the U.S. Postal Service, and it's still like in Indianapolis. So how it's going to be here by 9 o'clock tonight, I just don't see it happening. So I got sick and tired of waiting. I've been listening to the streaming version off of iTunes now since it was released last Friday. I guess that was last week Friday. Man, time flies. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go out and just get the regular CD version. I'm actually going to physically go to the store. So I went and looked online. Barnes & Noble had it, which is so weird. This is where you have to go to get music now. And I realized, too, that I actually wanted to get the regular version of the album as well, because the deluxe version, while it has a larger booklet, the cover's different. It only has one of the two angel wing floral arrangements, and the Memento Mori Depeche Mode logo on the cover is in black and white. And I know that the regular version, actually have it in my hand right here, is embossed, and I really wanted to have a copy of the red embossed version. So yesterday, I went over to Barnes & Noble. First off, I couldn't find out where the music was when I got inside the store. How these stores stay open with the way that we get, books these days, I did just shocked. All of the businesses in the shopping mall, it seems like they're all struggling. The half of them are empty, but here's this Barnes & Noble still there, still, filled. And I know that Barnes & Noble sells other things, or you can get toys and stuff there as well. So they're kind of, and there's a Starbucks coffee shop inside as well. So I go inside and I'm looking around, and they used to have a whole section for movies and music, right? And I'm looking, and I couldn't see it. So I asked the lady, and it's like, well, I'm looking for music. And she goes, oh, it's over here. So she walks me to the far side of the store. Well, of course, it's a bookstore. So she walks me to the section where there are books about music. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm looking for a physical CD. And she goes, oh, well, we don't have a ton, but they're up front. Now, I had looked online and saw that they had this in stock. And so they had like one stand that had the new releases there, and then there was Depeche Mode's Memento Mori. It was a fun little experience for me, simply to be able to go out and physically purchase an album, because I'm trying to think of the last time that I did that. I didn't do it on Spirit. I might have done it on Delta Machine. Maybe. Anyway, so I got it in my hand, walked outside, took the wrapper off, and just did a quick look of the inside of the... Are they still calling these digipacks, by the way? I'm going to comment more on this in a moment, but are they still calling these? So you have the gatefold, right, where it opens up. We have the photo that we saw, released already of Martin and Dave with the table and the skull in the middle. We have the tribute there to Andrew John Fletcher, and then we have the very Anton Corbijn, doodle art of Martin and Dave. And then the fold over the gate, and we have the amazing photo of the black and white photo of Martin and Dave making the world in my eyes symbol with his fingers, and then the shadow to represent Andrew Fletcher. And this was another reason why I wanted to get the physical release, because apparently the deluxe edition doesn't have this particular photograph. And I definitely wanted to have a hard copy of this. And then we have the back, which has the empty chairs and the table and the skull and the track listing. And then you can pull out the book that has the lyrics in it. And this is always a part of the special process of getting new Depeche Mode music, right? And I know, reading a lot of people's comments, especially on the Depeche-Mode homepage on the Halo forum, those of you who wait to get the full experience, to get the physical release, to have the headphones, to go through the whole process like we all did. I know, like I did for, decades at this point in time with previous Depeche Mode releases. But, now, obviously, this year didn't do it, getting a leaked copy, weeks before it came out, and then hearing the other version. So yesterday was a fun little trip down memory lane of going through the process and going through the lyrics and listening to the album. The one thing that I wanted to point out specifically was that getting the physical CD, putting it in the stereo system in my car, which is decent, it sounded so much better than the streaming version. I had been listening to the Bluetooth from my cell phone that connects to my stereo, right? I've been listening to the streaming version on iTunes, and it sounded fine. It sounded better than the vinyl rip that I had been listening to from my phone. The CD version, though, was... If the streaming version was a 7, if the CD version is a 10, the streaming version was a 7. And the production on the album shined through, because I had it cranked almost to the max in my car, and it still sounded crisp. And I can't do that with a lot of the other releases, especially going back to even the, because I have the remastered versions of the, previous albums of which they released the remastered versions. And some of the early stuff that's a lot more synth-y than, say, Songs of Faith and Devotion. Songs of Faith and Devotion, you crank it up and it just gets muddled. Memento Mori doesn't. It sounds fantastic. And I would put the instrumentation on Memento Mori, the majority of those tracks I would place more with something akin to Songs of Faith and Devotion in terms of the complexity and and I use this word a lot, the beefiness of it. It sounds spectacular in the car. So highly recommend the CD over just listening to a streaming version. And of course, I know a lot of people have purchased the vinyl version of it. I tweeted this out at the My Nerd World, and a fan had responded to me and said that, basically commenting that how much people forget that the streaming versions are, the CD versions sound way better than the compressed MP3s that we hear. And so I was so excited, and it reminded me that I need to get sort of a proper stereo system. But now I have a CD that I can toss into my Blu-ray player and play over my surround sound system. Even though this isn't formatted for surround sound, I can still get a really good sound quality from it, albeit different, in terms of the stereo fidelity being broken up into my surround sound. So highly recommend, if you have not purchased the CD of it and you've just been listening to MP3s to go and pick it up. Last thing I want to say on this, though, is, man, I wish we still had the jewel case. I know the last jewel case that we got would have been Playing the Angel. It was a different type of jewel case. So the last sort of traditional jewel case CD that I have is for Sounds of the Universe. And maybe, and I haven't looked, maybe you can get a jewel case version of Delta Machine. But I just miss the classic jewel cases. I mean, that's just what I grew up with, apart from the cassettes. Which makes me laugh a little bit because I know they went to the digipacks because of, the environment or whatever. But they went and put a CD out for crying. I mean, a cassette out for crying out loud. I mean, that's all plastic, right? I'm just saying. Anyway, I love having the physical release in my hands. I will always buy the physical release of Depeche Mode. I just wish that I'd done a better job of getting it in my hands sooner because I still don't have the deluxe edition. So when I do get to the deluxe edition, I'll talk about it on next week's show. How does that sound? Sound good? That sounds good to me. All right, let's move on. Listener feedback. First, we hear from Javier Garcia, who says, John, how are you? I'm doing well. Thank you very much. After listening to the album several times, I'd say it's a good album. I agreed with you. This is the best after Songs of Faith and Devotion, and not because all the songs are fabulous, but because I can listen to the full album without skipping any one of the songs. And I'll give you some further thoughts on this. I got a lot of people that are asking me questions about the record, so I'm holding off on some of my commentary until I get into the listener feedback. In my opinion, it has not hits besides Ghosts Again, but all good songs. I agree. Previous albums do have a few hits, but overall was not a good album. Just a quick comment on Don't Say You Love Me, reminiscent of a tango song. Finally, I have to say the Ghosts Again is a wonderful song. On my top 5, considering all songs after Wilder left. I love this song. When I sing it out loud in the car, I get goosebumps. It's amazing. Waiting now for the South American tour. Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't. I think People Are Good has the potential to be a single, but there aren't any other songs other than Ghosts Again that really stick out to me. A lot of people are pointing towards Wagging Tongue, and while that song has grown on me quite a bit, I don't see it having hit single potential. I think Ghosts Again is the clear, definitive hit single that has potential to still cross over into sort of your other genres beyond alternative music, whereas, People Are Good could be a hit on alternative radio. Lars Guthiel writes, would it be interesting to hear whether Always You and Never Let Me Go have grown on you in the meantime? Both are total highlights for me on this album alongside Before We Drown. Happy that the album doesn't stop at People Are Good. For the rest, I am with you. A great album, best since Ultra. Always You and Never Let Me Go have absolutely grown on me. I really do love all the songs on this album now, and I'm not skipping any of them anymore. What I find is interesting about these songs, and specifically the ones that didn't really grab me initially, and that would have been Caroline's Monkey, Always You, and Never Let Me Go. Speak to Me works good as a closer. My Cosmos Is Mine works good as an opener. I will not skip them, but I'm not jumping to those tracks individually to listen to them, if that makes sense. The songs have been growers for me, but I've also found them to be kind of seductive in the way that I'm discovering the instrumentation of them with every listen in different ways. It's really interesting. I had the very similar experience with Cover Me from Spirit, where the instrumental portion of the second half of that song always sounds different to me. And when I listen to a lot of the songs on Memento Mori, there's so much going on with the tracks that I find myself gravitating towards different parts of the instrumentation upon different listens. And I think that's what really adds to the re-listenable quality of the record in and of itself, is that the songs are so layered. Andreas writes, question to all my fellow devotees. When do the extra tracks come out? Does anyone know anything? Martin said, we recorded 16 songs during the recording process. We have 4 that will be released at some point. I'm not sure exactly what format. Maybe optimistic to think that somebody will know more than Martin, but fans usually know more than the artists themselves. My top 5 from Memento Mori: Always You, Speak to Me, Soul with Me, Before We Drown, Don't Say You Love Me. Martin alluded to those songs being released sometime next year. And said that he definitely said they will be released. I think we're supposed to get a B-side of Sundown hopefully tomorrow with the single release and the remixes for Ghost Again. I don't think that those are included in those 4 extra tracks, so my guess would be that maybe we'll get some sort of interesting EP next year, unless they release further singles and they add them to that. But Martin seemed to allude to there being sort of a special EP release. And it reminded me a lot of when Martin has talked about in the past, like teasing the box sets coming out as well. Because he did that before when they were teasing Sounds of the Universe, that there would be a box set that would be coming out. And so he alluded to there being an EP, which makes me think there'll be some sort of EP release sometime next year. Jeremy Casper writes, give us another review of the album. That's what I've been doing. Memento Mori is amazing. I'm in love with it. After 20 or so listens, this album is solid. Best album in a while. Hate to rank them, but this one is definitely up there at the top alongside a few other albums of theirs. So my plan is, thank you, Jeremy, for the email. So I'm not going to get into a song-by-song breakdown again because as we get further into the tour and more distance from the release of the album, I want to be able to have time to talk about the album moving forward. And so taking specific podcasts, making them potentially a little bit shorter, but focusing on the individual tracks of the album. So that's my intention moving forward. So as a bit of a preview for what you can expect on the podcast, along with your listener feedback every week, I'll certainly be talking about the remixes for Ghost Again, the continue tour reviews when you write them in, but at some point I will be going through the album sort of individually track by track. That's my intention. Friend of the show, Stephanie from Germany, who always sends many love greetings, says, I was skeptical when you said the album can grow on you, so here I am. There's something magical about this album at the moment that won't let me go. I realized I needed some space. As lines of the lyrics were running through my head, the feeling this album gives is just the DM feeling. Listen, drop, forget everything else, and I think they did a great job with that for me. Thank you, as always. It's great to hear from you, Stephanie. This album is different than other Depeche Mode albums. And I know there are some people complaining and they're wanting for the days of old and some of their more accessible pop material. And when you listen to tracks from specifically Violator and, even going back to Black Celebration, but sort of a mix in between, those songs that are more on the nose, your Enjoy the Silence, your Policy of Truth, Strange Love, even Black Celebration and Question of Time. Those are songs that are more straightforward in terms of the lyrical content, and certainly that was much more reflective of the band at the time. Depeche Mode has evolved, and I think it's always a struggle for fans of any band wanting to have music that sounded like when they first fell in love with the band, but this band has grown and changed, and what I think is so special about Memento Mori is that while the writing is certainly more mature, for lack of a better way to describe it, maybe a little bit more ambiguous, it is reflective of where the band has been over the course of the past few decades, especially the time removed from Ultra and songs of the Songs of Faith and Devotion. So for me, it is the best album since Songs of Faith and Devotion in terms of the quality and collection of songs, even though I can wholly admit, as I believe Javier did, that there are songs off of other albums that perhaps I enjoy more, but in terms of a cohesiveness of an album in and of itself, listening from start to finish, I like Memento Mori more than those other songs. I mean, you can't I mean, I can't discount tracks like Barrel of a Gun and Useless and It's No Good and Home in terms of singles and Perfect. I love In Sympathy. You go to A Pain That I'm Used to and Precious. You go to Broken off of Delta Machine and to a lesser extent Where's the Revolution, but I love Poison Heart and really strong singles. But in terms of the cohesiveness of the album, I'm skipping a lot of tracks. Whereas Memento Mori, while he mentioned, and I agree, there may not be some upfront, in-your-face, accessible singles. As a whole, the album just works start to finish. And at that 48-50-minute mark, it just makes for a really good, solid listen. This is what happens. I get into review mode, and then I can't stop. All right, let's go to... I lost my page. Shane Thomas Donovan writes, Dave said in an interview recently with K-Rock that they do have some alternate songs for the tour. I would love to see Lie to Me, Pleasure Little Treasure, Blasphemous Rumors, Fly on the Windscreen back in their set list. I actually like the set list for the Memento Mori tour. You can't please everybody, but this new set list has a theme I've noticed, especially with Sister of Night and Waiting for the Night in this set. Those tracks are seamless with the overall lyrical theme of the new album. Memento Mori is a solid blanking, not going to say that word, album. It's got a mix of Some Great Reward, Black Celebration, Music for the Masses, Violator, tinge of Ultra. The songwriting is solid and the ambience is back. Always You is my favorite track, but I love the whole album from beginning to finish and haven't felt that way since Ultra. You can clearly hear that Dave and Martin put their heart and soul into this album. And it's just crappy that some people are crapping on things if they don't enjoy it. 10 for 10 for Memento Mori. Yeah, there was an interview that Martin did with with a radio station, and it was funny because the woman had only heard the album once and mistakenly said that he sang Soul to Me, to which he had to correct her, and that made me laugh a little bit. But Martin said that they put a lot of time into the track flow, and that they still really do think about making sure that the fans are getting the experience that they want them to get and that the album flows together in a certain way. And I think that's really special. Peter Schwab says, greetings from Sweden. Greetings. If you remove, in my opinion, the weakest songs, least exciting, in the middle, Soul with Me and Caroline's Monkey, sacrilege. You have a great 10-track album. Best regards, Peter. Yeah, I felt that way at the beginning when it came to a couple of those tracks. I wanted it to end with People Are Good, but I totally am taking that back now because I do love Always You and Never Let Me Go. And I always liked Speak to Me. Yes, Matt, I love Never Let Me Go now. That song's on repeat for me, so you can smile. That's my friend Matt. He was very distraught and sent me a very long and detailed email and explanation of why I needed to love that song. And in retrospect, he's right on every note. It was unfair of me early to place it in the Soothe My Soul category. So I like that song now. There you go. All right. Let's see. Next. I have to apologize because I don't have the name. I think this is from Jason, but I may be wrong. All right. He writes this. I've listened to Memento Mori now. I think it's one of those albums that you hear and you feel differently with each listen. First, apart from Ghosts Again, obviously, Wagging Tongue, My Favorite Stranger were standouts for me. Yeah, I've always liked My Favorite Stranger, but I'm really starting to love that song. That middle thrashing guitar, static, whatever you want to call it, is just awesome. I love how it just feels like it keeps going and going and going, and then Dave's vocals come back in. I think we all look for the next Enjoy the Silence on the first listen. I think some of the songs could have gone bigger with the chorus to aim for a massive hit single. However, this is Depeche Mode, and Depeche Mode do what Depeche Mode do, and who are we to argue after 40 years of loving them? After that, you start to appreciate the album as a whole, and I think it's brilliant. Each song becomes better and better. I can't believe how 80s the album sounds. It's retro DM with fresh DM with a blend of Moody, Aha, Pet Shop Boys, and Alphaville. People will totally dismiss that, but we all hear what we want to hear. Yes, we do. We all have an opinion. It's still so Depeche Mode, and can't wait to see them play live. So my apologies. I cut and pasted and didn't have your name there. So feel free to let me know who you were. All right. Mark Leaning writes, this is such a beautiful album to listen to. There's Violator fans and there's Depeche Mode fans. Here's another email. And again, I apologize. I didn't copy your name. Ugh. Anyways, this poster writes, hello, my nerd world. I discovered your podcast recently, and it's become a wonderful addition as I enjoy the sequence of the new Depeche project. I look forward to your new podcast regularly, and it's been lovely listening to you as Memento Mori has landed. Thank you. Thank you, and please feel free to email me back and let me know who you were, and I apologize for missing it. All right. I'm going to save a few of these. Looking at the clock. Yeah, I wanted to keep this a little bit shorter. So if I don't get to your email on this show, just know that I will be getting to it on another episode. I just got to have a lot of email this week. All right, let's go through a few more, though. Philip writes, I held off on seeking out the leaked album, so I woke up at 3 a.m. UK time on release day for a listen. I've been hugely intrigued by your own positive and exciting thoughts on the early hearings that you had ahead of the release. No doubt you've had many emails. Great to hear the majority think it's a fantastic record, which I most certainly do. What was immediately striking was the quality of songs, the consistency of production, the definite 80s vibe, the synth focus, Dave and Martin sounding fresh and powerful, a joyful use of sweeping strings again, perhaps the most post-Alan Wilder, several cinematic feeling tracks, lots of textures and layers to enjoy exploring on many listens that follow. So kind of keying in on what I was talking about earlier. Overall, fantastic. And I'd like to say loving checking in on your podcast. Keep them coming. Take care and enjoy. Philip, thank you very much. Leeds, UK, Magic Circle tickets booked. All right, let's go to Modehead 101 writes, you were spot on with this album, John. Mode's best since Ultra. Superb production and so many great songs. Thank you, Modehead 101. Amy Roth writes, experienced an epic show last night in Sacramento. The concert, the set list, the performance, the energy was incredible. Then listening to the full Memento Mori album afterwards gave me goosebumps. It's a very special album, and your preview and comments definitely resonated with me. Thank you. The concert and this album absolutely exceeded my expectations. Thank you for your podcast. I was waiting for it to come out, too. All right. Let's go to... let me back up here. All right. Let's go to Jason. And Jason writes this. I sense that these shows are what new hotels, bars, and restaurants would call a soft opening. The guys mentioned in an interview that the first few shows, the first American leg, were just to promote the release of the album. So I expect things to change when they do the European stadiums onwards. I even think some of the staging overhead lighting is stripped back for these initial shows, as I feel the production is a little too sparse. Interesting. Apparently, they have been playing full versions of Strangelove, Never Let Me Go, Policy of Truth, and Soundcheck. So this would certainly lead into Martin saying that they had rehearsed 25 to 28 songs, which is a weird number. I mean, you either rehearse 25 or 28, so maybe there was 27. So fingers crossed for People Are Good Before We Drown, Don't Say You Love Me, and they find their way into the set. An acoustic version of Soul With Me is not working, especially that infectious chorus. It needs to be the album version. I saw this quote from Music Tech's website. They say, we could easily just go out and play the hits, but that's not what we're about. Okay. So that's interesting. Especially it, again, the thought that this could be a soft opening and perhaps even the tour, even the staging could change. I don't know. We'll see. I can make an argument to say that wouldn't happen because it feels like that would be, somewhat cumbersome to do that. Like if you're going to have the staging, do it now. Do you have stuff sitting off waiting to the side? I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. Violator90 writes, found your podcast on YouTube, really like your uploads, and have listened to several since yesterday. I'm a huge DM fan since 85, 86. Disappointed with the latest albums, Sounds of the Universe, Delta, and Spirit. I'm not in a cult, but Memento Mori is a complete masterpiece. Couldn't wait for the official release. It's been on repeat since Tuesday, and I'm blown away. All right, one more, and it comes from Devo. Thank you so much for the passion and dedication that you bring to the table on every episode. I found the podcast a few weeks ago, and stay tuned. I am from Essen, Germany, where I saw them for the first time in 1987. This world tour is a very special one for me because I'm going AAA with my wife, who was born in Basildon, and a good friend who makes this happen. I can't wait, and I love the new record so much. It's my number 5 after Music for the Masses, Violator, Black Celebration, and Faith and Devotion. This record is, unfortunately, the best since Ultra and the first without Fletch. I love the homage on the sleeve inside the gatefold cover, and it gave me shivers to see the two men, the three shadows, on Corbijn's masterpiece. Keep up the passion and enjoy the silence, Devo. Thank you very much, Devo. I appreciate that. Oh, actually, I got, I'll do, all right, I'll bang out 2 more here, and then I'm all done. I got to go have lunch. Amy writes, upon further listening, and I'm still working on this, I may be stating the obvious here. Cosmos, don't mess with me, I'm fine, don't pick me apart, knock down my shrine. I have established boundaries, and you can't get in, borders are outlined. A somewhat defensive stance. And then there's a journey, a downward spiral, if you will, a breakdown or takedown of this person, the individual, the ego, to the end. Speak with me, I'm a ball of mush. A death of sorts has occurred, a death of an individual, and I've now been subsumed by another person. That was me, is gone. I've been erased and exist totally in relation to you. Does this make sense? You may be like no blank Sherlock, but anyway, my 2 cents. I hope you're well, Amy. Yeah, I can see that. You know, I mean, it's an interesting take, and I think it's one of the things that's amazing about Depeche Mode is that they're so, it could be so ambiguous and mean so much to so many different people. Let's see. WATL, We Are the Line writes, thanks for your podcast and your review I'd listened to some days ago. I listened to Memento Mori, and it really moved me. After the first listening, I felt something missed, and then I entered in, and it was a really great album, soulful, very well produced. There are some mistakes of sound, okay, Before We Drown, for example. The only track that I feel I won't enter in, Caroline's Monkey, but the album is the first one that I keep listening to again and again since Songs of Faith and Devotion. Actually, it gave me strength to love again, to hope again. So thank you to them, and thanks to all who might follow this incredible opportunity we have to live in the present that they gave us with this album. Caroline's Monkey is one that's really grown on me, and that's the one where the instrumentation has really grabbed me as of late. It just reminds me of going back and listening to Songs of Faith and Devotion. I remember for Music for the Masses, there was a challenging aspect to it. You love this band so much and you want to love all their stuff, so you're willing to give these things a chance that you typically wouldn't give to other music, where you might listen to a song and go, I'm going to dismiss that. I'm not going to spend time with it. It didn't grab me. We tend to give Depeche Mode more because of how much we love the band and what they've given to us. And this album has done that for me, where I give these songs a chance, and I had such respect for Martin and Dave and the crew behind this album, too. A song like Caroline's Monkey, I was walking yesterday. I was out walking the dog, and it came on, and I just kind of listened to it in a way that I hadn't before, and suddenly I was like, man, this is a really good song. And it was the instrumentation and how it kind of ends abruptly, like it ends when you want it to end, and it was like, man, that was satisfying. All right, one more. I keep saying that, but Pizza Mike writes this. All day I waited to listen to Memento Mori to come out, and finally, 9 a.m. Pacific time, it gets here. Chills all over like a giddy little boy. I'll be listening to it all night until I memorize the words. I can't wait to see them in December with my 2 best friends I grew up listening to them with. I'm only on Don't Say You Love Me, loving it all, no complaints. Just wanted to check in with you. Can't wait to enjoy it while rolling dough. Sincerely, Pizza Mike. There you go. Thank you, Pizza Mike. And thank you to everybody who's written into the show. Again, if I did not get to your email, I will get to it on another episode. And that wraps up the show for this week. Looking forward to hearing from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. If that's hard to remember, by the way, I also have the Jon Justice, Jon, so the Jon Justice @gmail.com. I have that too. At the My Nerd World on Twitter, at the My Nerd World on Instagram, at Jon Justice on TikTok, and at Jon, Jon Justice on Facebook. Those are all my social networking. Thank you for checking out the show. I hope that wherever you are, you're listening to Depeche Mode. You're happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. And I'll talk to you again next week. Right now, I'm going to go eat some lunch. Bye.
My nerd world.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Garn